It's time to have a brutally honest conversation about crime in America, and if you're easily offended, swipe up. This is not the video for you. Do you know that 1 in every 22 black men in America will commit murder in his lifetime?
Yeah, we back. Now, today's video is going to be a follow-up video to the one I dropped yesterday entitled Black Crime 1350 Conservative Propaganda Debunked. Now, in that video, I was attacking a common talking point you hear from certain conservative commentators, right? The black community, black men are X amount of the population committing X amount of the crimes. And of course, in that video, we went deep into that topic, debunked that topic, deconstructed that topic. Check it out. Now, today's video is going to be a follow-up video to that one. It's still going to be talking about crime in America, but we're going to be focused on a different demographic. You know, we love talking about black men, and you know, black men always get the spotlight, but today I want to share some of that spotlight with some other demographics. You know, I don't want to hog up all the airtime. You know, we love talking about black men all goddamn day, so I want to step off the stage and I want to allow some other demographics to get on center stage, right? Now, like I said, a common talking point of certain conservative media personalities is that black men are X amount of the population committing X amount of the violent crimes, right? That's why they go around saying things like 1350 and things like that. So when it came to me, I came with a different numerical equation. I came with the 2977. Now, what is the 2977? 2977, I get that from the stats that came directly from the federal sentencing data, right? Which means that white males are 29% of the US population, and they make up 77% of the individuals convicted on certain crimes against children, right? And I feel like they spend so much time talking about black men, but we never have conversations about other demographics. So I want to take it upon myself. I'll start the conversation. Since nobody else wants to have the conversation, I'll go ahead and do it. Now, when you look at those numbers, 29% of the population committing 77% of any crime, it doesn't matter. You are way overrepresented. That is ridiculous, right? So that's what I mean by 2977. So we're going to go in deep on this topic. We're going to go to certain data that comes from the government, certain research papers, and we're going to go to a series of news stories that came out recently. And we're going to examine what are these socioeconomic realities, the cultural realities that drive this phenomenon. So not wasting no time, let's get into it. Now, when you examine the data that's available, the first thing you'll realize is this. There's high male representation, right? Over 90% of those sentenced for child pornography offenses are men. So that's a shame. But when you go even deeper, right? Now, time out. Now, because I don't want to keep saying the word child pornography in my video, because it's even disgusting for me to say, I'm just going to say exploitation material, right? That's what I'm going to say instead of just repeating that over and over throughout the video. So I'm going to say exploitation material instead. So let's continue. Now, as you can see, over 90% are men, but when you go down even deeper to the demographics, it says white individuals are overrepresented in exploitation material cases, and statistics from the U.S. Sentencing Commission show that they make up the largest racial group of offenders. For example, a 2023 report on federal exploitation material cases indicated that 77.1% of the offenders were whites. The average offender is typically in their late 30s to early 40s, is often single, and tends to have more education and higher income than other types. Right? So as you can see, like I mentioned in my video yesterday, when you examine the crime that takes place in the black community, you notice that it's mainly relegated and condensed into the lower rung of society, right? On the economically marginalized fringes of society, that's where the crime is highly concentrated. But when you examine these crimes, you notice that it's not often the economically disadvantaged sectors of society. It's actually those who have an education, you know, those who went to school, those who got some money, those who have a property, those who are on paper, at least on the surface, productive members of society, but they're engaged in certain nefarious activity behind the scenes, right? So it's very weird. Usually, you know, crime is supposed to be amongst the economically disadvantaged, but in this culture, crime is happening at all levels of society, right? All the way at the top down to the bottom. All type of crime is going down, you know, just criminality all over the place. Now let's continue. Now let's head over to the United States Sentencing Commission, right? Coming straight from the government. Now, as you can see, for those who were sentenced for exploitation material cases, 98% were men, 77% were whites, 12.8% Hispanic, 5.8% black, 4.3% other races. Now, before I get started, I just want to make something very clear. I want to give a disclaimer, right? I'm not saying that any one community has a monopoly over any type of crime or predatory behavior. We already know every group has individuals engaged in all type of nefarious activity. What I'm talking about in this presentation is the overrepresentation of a certain demographic, right? Compared to your share of the overall population, to your share of arrests and convictions in certain categories of crime, right? So when you see one demographic show up consistently more than you'd expect in a certain sector of crime, that's simply all we're talking about, right? So we're going to be examining the numbers, the data, the patterns, the research, right? That's all I'm doing, right? So anyway, let's continue. Let's get into it. Now, Dr. Kevin Steinmetz, a professor, a sociologist, anthropologist, he actually wrote an article conducting research on the topic specifically. The article was entitled, "Exploring the Explanations for the White Overrepresentation in Online Child Sex Abuse and Exploitation." And some of the findings that he came to in his research was that one of the main drivers was opportunity and access. It said that in the early years when, child exploitation material first began popping on the internet and online, white males had a large amount of access to home internet, personal computers, and credit cards in the early years. So they were pretty much the ones who were the earliest and the first to the game in terms of the internet. So once the internet first began, blowing up back in the late 90s, early 2000s, these guys went straight to watching child porn, right? So anyways, they also mentioned the cultural factors, right? Certain online communities evolved in forums that were frequented by white middle-class males, which suggests that there was a cultural affinity in terms of the patterns, right? So that's some of the findings that Dr. Steinmetz found in his research. Right now, let's continue. I'm going to go over to another paper, this one titled Child Exploitation Material Possessors, the Trends in the Offender and the Case Characteristics, right? Take a look up on the screen. In many respects, the possessors of exploitation material arrested in 2006 were similar to those arrested back in 2000. They were virtually all men, and the great majority were non-Hispanic whites. They were not concentrated in any particular geographic location. Their levels of education and income were similar in both years and ranged widely. Few had backgrounds that included mental illness, violence, substance abuse, or prior arrests for sexual or other offenses. Few cases involved multiple offenders. Although the number of arrests for the crimes involving exploitation material possession more than doubled between 2000 and 2006, the population of offenders and the dynamics of the offenses remained stable in many respects. So between 2000 and 2006, the arrests for those engaged in this type of behavior, it more than doubled, right? And the internet, obviously from 2000 and 2006, obviously became more widespread. So as the internet became more widespread, this activity became more widespread. But they said that the population and the demographics of the offenders remained the same. So that tells me that as internet use became more widespread amongst the population, you would think that this level of activity or criminal activity would rise amongst the general population of men in general. But they noticed that it was only one demographic of men that was driving the activity, right? It was one demographic that was the main producers, distributors, and consumers of the activity. So that's what they find in their research. Now let's continue. Now, this is coming from the Home Office, I believe, out in the UK. Now, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the Home Office in the UK is like the equivalent of in the United States, we have the Department of Homeland Security, I think. Right? Anybody from the UK, let me know if I'm correct, right? But anyway, they said this: most child sex abuse gangs are made up of white men, according to the Home Office, right? That's what the government out in the UK is saying. It found that while offenders come from diverse backgrounds, groups tended to be of men of the same ethnicities. Money and sex were the motivations, as well as a sexual interest in children and misogyny. Now let's get into another research paper entitled "From Child Pornography Offending to Child Sexual Abuse, a Review of Child Pornography Offender Characteristics and a Risk for a Crossover." They said this when it came to demographics. There is some consensus about the demographic characteristics of child pornography offenders. For example, studies report that offenders tend to be primarily white, aged between 25 and 50 years old, and compared to child sexual abusers, they're more likely to be employed. With regard to intellectual functioning, a considerable amount of child pornography offenders have above average intelligence. In several studies, about 30% had completed higher education, right? So these are men who, like Tim Tebow said, these are men who have jobs, good jobs. These are men who, probably got a few dollars, who have higher education, and in their free time, they like to engage in this type of activity, right? Now, let's continue. Now, just like in my video yesterday, where I showed you a bunch of different news stories, recent news stories about a bunch of black men who received exonerations, who are freed from prison for crimes they did not commit. I'm going to do the same thing in this case. I'm going to show you a bunch of news stories, recent stories that are related to the topic we're talking about today, right? So not wasting no time. We spoke about this in the video last week, right? A Charleston County magistrate judge charged with possessing child exploitation material, right? This individual right here, judge accused of having child abuse materials. A judge down in South Carolina. Now, let's continue. August 2025, a New Hampshire police officer arrested and charged with child exploitation offenses. This individual right here. The feds charge a man who worked as a Seabrook police officer with receiving child exploitation material, right? As you can see, looks like a regular guy walking down the street. Now, take a look up on the screen. According to the charging documents, on October 16, 2024 to October 17, 2024, Giarusso knowingly received video files depicting child abuse on Kik. I think that's a social media app. It is alleged that the victims in these videos appear to be approximately 5 years old to 11 years old, right? So this guy, you know what I mean? He's not attracted to grown women, beautiful women. Nah, that's not for him. That's not for him. Give him the 5-year-olds and the 6-year-olds. That's more his speed, right? That's what he's into. That's what gets him excited. He don't want a beautiful woman, beautiful, shapely woman, nice shape, nice figure. No, he don't want that. He not into that. No. Right. Anyway, let's continue. June 2025, a federal agent has been charged with the production of child exploitation material. Right. These are all recent cases. And you notice they're all law enforcement so far. Judges, sheriffs, and police officers. And this guy, a agent of Homeland Security, as you can see, right? Timothy Ryan Gregg, 51 years old, coerced a minor and produced child exploitation material. According to the court documents, Timothy Ryan Gregg attempted, coerced, and enticed a minor victim to take part in sexually explicit conduct for the purpose of producing child exploitation material. According to court documents, the father of the minor victim discovered multiple sexually explicit images and videos on the minor victim's cell phone, right? So this guy, instead of doing his job as an agent of, Homeland Security, instead of protecting the American people, he is assaulting the children of the American people. Now let's continue. May 2025. Now you notice all of these cases happen in the past few weeks, past few months. A Minnesota state trooper, once again, law enforcement, police officer, judges, Homeland Security agents, state troopers, right? A Minnesota state trooper charged with the production of child exploitation material. This guy right here, Jeremy Polanski, charged with producing the material, right? Like I told you, the government breaks it down into different categories. You have those who are producing the material, the videographers, the producers, the video editors, right? These guys are on set with their cameras abusing children, right? Then you have those who are trafficking the material, right? Sending it around, distributing it, selling it for profit, things like that. And then you have those who are receiving it, the consumers, right? So it's like a whole chain, right? From the production to the consumption. So this guy, when he was off the clock as a state trooper, when he wasn't, serving and protecting the community, allegedly, his side job was producing exploitation material of children, right? That was his side gig. His side hustle was abusing children and selling the videos, right? That was his side hustle. Now let's continue. March 2025, a sheriff's deputy arrested on child exploitation charges. Like I said, every single story in the past few weeks, past few months has been law enforcement. From the judges to the cops on the street. A Steuben County Sheriff deputy who went by the name the AC Man 990 online faces child exploitation charges, right? This guy right here, right? So when he was off the clock, when he wasn't working as a cop, he was, indulging in child exploitation. Now let's continue. July 2025, a Montgomery County police officer charged in a child exploitation case. My God, that's this guy right here, right? So I don't know what's up with the policeman. I don't know what's up with law enforcement and this activity. But anyways, take a look up on the screen. September 2025, a Blount County Sheriff's Office employee arrested on child exploitation charges. He faces 11 counts involving child exploitation, including the dissemination of child sex material, transmitting obscene material, and electronic solicitation of a child. My goodness. Now, let's continue. August 2025, an Illinois State Police trooper arrested on federal child exploitation charges. This individual right here, right? I don't know what is up with these individuals and the police. Like I said, every single case has been a policeman. Now, take a look up on the screen. At the time of his arrest, agents executed a search warrant at his home where they found a 16 gigabyte flash drive inside a nightstand in his bedroom. In addition to a folder labeled with his government-issued email, another subfolder on the flash drive labeled as DIVX contained about 200 videos of children as young as 9 years old being sexually abused by adults. Now, let's continue. Former Covington Deputy Police Chief indicted on child exploitation charges. The new indictment comes more than a year after his previous trial ended in a hung jury. Now, basically what they're saying is this guy has been arrested again when just last year he beat a case, right? He beat the case last year and now he's been arrested again on new charges, right? So he beat the case and went right back to watching the material. Goddamn. Anyway, let's continue. A former deputy chief with the Covington Police Department is now facing more child exploitation charges. 41-year-old Randall Mahon was indicted on 17 counts of possession of child exploitation material involving juveniles and 1 count of indecent behavior with a juvenile under the age of 13. He was already facing 5 counts of possession and 1 count of indecent behavior with a juvenile. Now let's continue. April 2025, a former sheriff's deputy sentenced to 65 years in prison for child sex crimes. This individual right here, right? Now let's continue. A healthcare executive who was a repeat purchaser of child exploitation material who insisted on being called daddy by minors, right? So this guy right here, he wanted little children, call me daddy, call me daddy, right? This guy, right? Anyway, let's get into his story. A Long Island healthcare executive contacted 11 teenage girls for sexually explicit material and obtained thousands of videos of child exploitation material. My goodness. Anyway, the Fed said they found more than 500 images and 5,000 videos of child material on his phone, the vast majority of them from a nationwide distribution ring. They also said that he messaged 11 girls from the ages of 14 to 17 on social media and enticed them into sending sexual content for him, and he paid them for it. Now, let's continue. May 2025, he founded an orphanage for vulnerable boys in Haiti and was sentenced to 210 years in prison. Let's get into it. At trial, 6 victims who lived at the orphanage testified about the sexual abuse and the physical assaults they suffered at the hands of Gallenfield. Now adults, the victims spoke about the devastating impact the abuse had on them, according to the release. The defendants' sustained sexual, physical, and emotional abuse of some of the most vulnerable children in the world is intolerable. Now, when you look under the headline, it said that Michael Gallenfield used his position of trust and access to exploit vulnerable children under the guise of humanitarian work, right? So that's why it's very insulting to me when these guys always talk about, oh man, we do so much charity. Look at all the charity we doing. When in reality, we know that a good chunk of y'all is simply coming over to engage in all type of nefarious behavior that you couldn't get away with in your home country, right? To have an easy access and supply to children that are in vulnerable situations that you can exploit for your own personal, pleasure and vices. Now, anyway, let's continue. Gallenfield was arrested in January 2024. In February 2025, a federal jury convicted him of 1 count of traveling in foreign commerce for the purpose of engaging in illicit sexual conduct and 6 counts of engaging in illicit conduct in a foreign place between 2005 and 2010. Gallenfield operated several orphanages in Haiti and also opened another in the Dominican Republic. Now, let's continue. A former charity operator guilty of sex tourism in Haiti. Take a look up on the screen. That's this guy right here, Matthew Andrew Carter, who also went by other names as William Charles Harcourt and Bill Carter. I guess he had a bunch of different identities and aliases. Anyways, he was finally jailed in 2013 in Florida for committing child abuse in Haiti. The abuse was committed at a Haitian Children's Help Center, the Morning Star Center, which Carter helped to run from 1995 to 2011. It provided shelter, food, and clothing and school tuition for Haitian children. Now let's continue this story. A man who brought an 8-year-old girl to Canada as a sex slave has been sentenced to 18 years in prison. A 60-year-old Montreal man has been sentenced to 18 years in prison for bringing an 8-year-old girl from Ivory Coast to Canada and subjecting her to 3 years of sexual abuse. Now, listen, this is why we got to have this conversation, because this is not even about crime in the white community, because these guys do not keep their crime in the white community, right? It would be different if they were just abusing their own children, if they were just abusing the women in their own community and the boys in their own community. But these guys are taking their degeneracy and proclivities and they bringing it to our communities. They're bringing it to our countries. They're leaving their countries. They're hopping on flights across the world looking for our children. This guy left Montreal, hopped on an international flight, ended up in the villages of Ivory Coast looking for young girls and bringing them back and putting them in sexual slavery, right? And I don't know how they caught him, but somehow they caught him after many years. He done took this girl from the villages of Ivory Coast and brought her to Canada, and she had to be a sex slave for a random white man. This is crazy. Anyway, let's continue. December 2023, a missing teen has been found hidden under the trap door of the bedroom floor of a Kentucky man's house. Right? This guy right here, right? This guy, little girls going missing. This guy got little girls in bondage, trapped under the bedroom floor, right? Anyway, let's continue. A Green Oaks man has been arrested for sexually abusing a North Carolina girl. A 15-year-old child from North Carolina was rescued from a man in Green Oaks. On July 2024, the United States Marshals received information that a missing girl from Kannapolis, North Carolina, might be located at a house on the 31,000 block of Prairie Ridge Road in Green Oaks. Right now, that's this guy right here. Right, a missing 15-year-old girl is safe after she was rescued from an Illinois man's home who is now facing multiple felony charges for allegedly sexually abusing her. Andrew Sheck, 43 years old, allegedly encouraged the unidentified teenage girl to take a bus from where she lived to Chicago in July. The pair had been talking online since back in June. Once the teen arrived at the bus station, Andrew Sheck picked her up and brought her to his home, where he sexually abused her. On Thursday, the United States Marshals received a tip that she was possibly at his house. Officials witnessed Sheck leaving his house with the victim and took him into custody. Now, I remember this case, right? Take a look up on the screen. I remember this case because this girl was missing since back in February, right? Back in February 2024. And she wasn't found until like July 2024. So that's March, April, May, June, July, 5 months, right? So 5 months later, she was found in a whole different state, getting sexually abused by a white man. Now, let's continue. A missing girl discovery. A man lured a 14-year-old Georgia girl to his home, right? Now, another case, take a look up on the screen. This girl right here went missing back in May 2023, right? And take a look up on the screen. Ashley was at home with the man named Russell Cheeves, 41 years old. The lead detective for the agency has charged Russell Cheeves with enticing a child for indecent purposes and interference with custody. He is currently incarcerated in Clayton County in connection with the crimes, right? Now, that's this girl right here. She was missing for weeks and weeks, and when they found her, she was just shacking up with some degenerate white man. Like I said, it would be different if they kept their crime in their community and it was just amongst their own people, but it's not. It's not. Not only are they doing it to their own people, but they're leaving where they're at. They're leaving their enclaves and communities, coming into our communities, locating our young girls and boys. That's why we have to talk about it. That's why we have to have a conversation, because they're leaving their communities, coming to our cities and countries and looking for our children. And these things go under the radar because nobody wants to have the tough conversation, right? Nobody wants to have the tough conversation when it comes to this demographic. Everybody, the white man, but nobody wants to have real conversation though. Nobody wants to have real talk though, right? I don't understand. Now let's continue. A Connecticut federal judge orders the restitution to victims of a child sex abuser, right? Now that's this individual on the screen right here. Now, also like the other ones previous mentioned, he also left his community, went down to Haiti to come look for young children. In pleading guilty, Perlitz admitted that at various times between 2001 and 2008, he traveled from airports in the United States to Haiti to engage in illicit sexual conduct with minors, and he did in fact engage in sexual conduct with minor boys who attended school at PPT. Perlitz abused his position of authority to entice and persuade the minors to comply with the sex acts by providing them with the promise of food and shelter and other benefits, including cash, cell phones, electronics, shoes, clothes, and other items, right? Now, that's this guy right here, as you can see, left his community, left his city, left his country, going off in the countryside in Haiti, looking for young children, going out of his way to look for young children. Like, do you know how much work that is to book the flight, pack your bags, go to the airport, wait at the airport, wait in line, board the flight, get off the plane, go all the way to the countryside and locate the children? Like, you had to do an extensive amount of work to find your victims. And that's what I mean. That's why we have to have a conversation about these 2977s, because they're not keeping their crime condensed in their own community. The crime is spreading out to other communities. It's spreading out to our young girls, our young boys. That's why we got to talk about it. Now let's continue. A former missionary sentenced for sexually exploiting children in Haiti. A man with ties to Liberty Hill gets 40 years for sexually abusing Haitian orphans. Now, let's get into it. In a press release issued on Wednesday, the United States Attorney's Office said that Daniel John Pye, 36 years old, was convicted in November of 3 counts of traveling in foreign commerce with the purpose of engaging in illicit sexual conduct with the minor. Now, let's continue. A jury finds an Edmund man guilty of 7 counts of engaging in illicit sexual conduct with children in Kenya. That's this guy right here. Like I said, these guys leaving their communities, hopping on flights all across the world, not even across the country, all across the world, traveling, traversing various oceans just to go into some impoverished village just to touch on children. My God, let's continue. According to the evidence at trial, Durham was a volunteer at the Upendo Children's Home located in Kenya. Upendo specializes in assisting neglected Kenyan children by providing them with food, housing, and clothing in school and religion. Evidence showed that between April 2014 and June 2014, Durham traveled from Oklahoma City to Nairobi, Kenya, and while in Kenya, he engaged in illicit sexual conduct with 7 children under the age of 18. Now, let's continue. Next story. A British Airways pilot, Simon Wood, who killed himself in 2013, carried out child attacks during stopovers in Africa. Let's get into it. In Africa, he allegedly molested girls between the ages of 5 and 13 in schools and orphanages in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania between 2003 and 2013. A mother of 2 of the victims, aged 9 and 16, said that Mr. Simon Wood took them all to Intercontinental Hotel in Nairobi during stopovers in Kenya and showered her children with gifts. The woman said that he would bathe her children and others and also take them out. Mr. Simon Wood had been charged with 1 count of indecently assaulting a girl under 16, 2 counts of making indecent photographs of a child, right, child exploitation material, and 1 count of possessing indecent images of a child, right, possessing and producing child exploitation material. So he was a pilot, and during his stopovers in Africa, he would make stops in Africa to go look for children, right? So that's what he would do in his free time, right? I'm gonna go fly the plane, and when I'm not flying the plane, I'm gonna go to Africa and I'm gonna touch on children, right? And of course, they said that one of the methods that he would use to gain access to children was he would shower the mothers with gifts, right? I think that was the same thing. Like I mentioned, you remember the guy from Montreal who took the girl from Ivory Coast, right? And she was a sex slave in Canada. The way he was able to get access to that girl was because he made friends with the mother, right? He made friends with the mother. He showered the mother with gifts, took the mother out. And of course, our people, we're so colonized in the mind, oh my God, the white man, oh man, the almighty white man. I love the white man, right? So of course, you got your guard down, right? So that's why these guys are leaving their countries, leaving their cities, coming to our countries, coming to our communities, and we have our guard down around them because we don't have these tough conversations about who they are and what they do. But when it comes to us, they always talking about us and what we do and what we don't do, but we never have the tough conversations about them. We never tell the truth about them. And when we do talk about them, it's only the false image presented to us in the propaganda. Oh man, the white man and the white man this and that, but we never talk about the real deal conversations though. The real conversations. We never have these conversations, and they never have these conversations. So that means nobody's having these conversations. And meanwhile, under the table, they're engaging in all type of degenerate and disgusting activity with not only their children, but also our children as well. So listen, if nobody's gonna talk about it, that's fine. I'll talk about it, right? I'll talk about it. I'll get the conversation started. And maybe hopefully the conservative media propagandists will one day start having the tough conversations amongst their own community, about their own community. And maybe they can finally find some resolutions to the problem. So that way their children can stop suffering and also our children can stop suffering also. But anyways, man, I'm not gonna be here too long, man. It's your boy Nefakari. That's Salim back in the Billy. Yes, indeed. Second single off the next project is Spy and Bamako. Pin comment at the top, link in the description. Subscribe to the Patreon, NTD1814, and I'm gone. Peace. Feel like a see me, I feel like I'm Saudi or ran up on Yana in the middle of Bamako. Enemy line, they claiming he innocent. Don't do no talking, I gotta move militant. Don't do no talking, I hit him with facts. 1804, bringing it back. 1804 like I'm Mother Cap Henry. King with the vision, the crown never empty. Top of the mountain, my soldiers defend me. Ducking and dodging the foreign intelligence. Hitting my dance on the DGSE. Dodging they traps, still on my feet. Feeling impeccable, feel like I'm shining. Go to my neck and I'm flooded with diamonds. Go to my neck and I feel like a mess. Feel like a lion, I'm in the savannah. Feel like the king when I'm up in the jungle. Never defeated, I never been humble. Come out victorious every encounter. Money machine give me help when I count it. Money machine stack it up in a beat. Heart of a king and I ride for the team. Weight of the world got it stuck on my shoulders. Bet you can feel it, my heart getting colder. Yeah, gotta stay focused so when it's in shots, I gotta react. Cause I'm a target, I'm under attack. Grabbing a weapon, I tell her get back. Mission exposed, secrets unfold. Enemy try, but I'm still in control. Got your boy sitting in Bamako prison, hoping they wish we sending them home. Enemy know that we good under pressure. Been through the thunderous, turbulent storm. Shorty a diamond, I told her she pressure. Hop in a whip and I'm taking her home. Hop in a whip and I'm swerving, I'm smashed. Killing my enemies, one of my passion. Rocking this gold like we in bikini. Feel like the captain, I'm clutching a heater. Yeah, gotta stay focused so when it's in shots, I gotta react. Cause I'm a target, I'm under attack. Grabbing a weapon, I tell her get back. Mission exposed, secrets unfold. Enemy try, but I'm still in control. Got your boy sitting in Bamako prison, hoping they wish we sending them home. Enemy know that we good under pressure. Been through the thunderous, turbulent storm. Shorty a diamond, I told her she pressure. Hop in a whip and I'm taking her home. Hop in a whip and I'm swerving, I'm smashed. Killing my enemies, one of my passion. Rocking this gold like we in bikini. Feel like the captain, I'm clutching a heater.